Hello, everyone. Welcome back into the echo chamber. You're in here.
Ooh.
Yeah, we are deep within the echo chamber. Gooey, Corey, and McKenna here. And yeah, we're talking through Echoes of Wisdom. As we've said in the other videos, leave us a comment with any sort of topic you'd like to see broached about this game, or whatever. I guess we'll talk about anything Zelda, but yeah, give us some topics to go through after we're done with the game, and we'll go hit harder on specific aspects of the game. But I just kind of want to keep us going. We'll keep walking through our experience with the game, and there'll be some spoilers for the different parts of the game, and I think so for this one we're gonna kind of talk about at least the Jabul waters area and quest and dungeon and all that stuff, and if we got time maybe we'll get into Gerudo, but look out for that area of the game. That's what we're going to be talking about. So why don't we just let's get into it, and let's talk about, so last time we talked about the opening dungeon, and then we talked about exploration, and the game kind of opens up and lets you go a lot of places, but there's two sort of dungeons you can go to that the game guides you to. And I guess I should ask Corey, which one did you actually tackle first?
I did do Jabul Waters first, and that temple. Because when I first started exploring, I basically did a big loop around the right side of the map all the way up. So I already kind of had passed into that area, and instead of going down to what would lead me to the desert area, I was like, that music was so good, I gotta go back there and hang out there for a little while.
Okay, good choice. McKenna, how about you?
I also went to Jabul Waters first. I've been hearing a lot of people say they went to the desert first, so
Yeah, that's what I
good to
did.
hear someone else went to the waters first.
Wow,
Yeah,
how could you?
I had to
So
the
see
weird.
music
the
the music
the
called to me.
double
I just couldn't.
Zora. I was like, I want to see
Mm,
those guys interacting. That's what I want
Mm-hmm.
that
right
too.
now.
That too. That's a fun dynamic.
Yeah, I was still more kind of following the quest at this point, and I felt like, just looking at the map, I was like, oh, the desert seems closer. I don't know. That's it could have gone either way, but so I guess, okay, Corey, you came through it from a totally different way, because I feel like the way it guides you, you first run into that little town that we were sort of speculating about.
Nope,
Did you ever
not me.
did you ever see? You had to have
I
seen that
did
town
no.
at some point, right?
It was honestly on my way back down because like the way that whole storyline kind of starts going about is you have to visit like each of the Zora settlements, right? And you have to talk to each leaders, and they both storm out in a huff because they're like, "Oh, they insulted my music," and
And
they
they play
clearly
quite
the
badly.
chieftains of yeah the chieftains of these Zora tribes are having a quarrel. But I basically came up from the bottom right, and I visited the Sea Zora first, and then I went up and around to the River Zora, and then I came down to the town. So, but I mean, it's fine.
Wow.
It's I got the gist of
No,
it, you
I'm
know.
impressed with between this and Tears of the Kingdom, your knack for sort of just like going backwards through the areas.
The
Never
desert,
gets
the
old.
desert one, the desert one. I was much more like, all right, I'll just let it take me.
Corey's hero's path needs to be studied.
Yeah,
I wish they
yeah,
had that in
that
this
would be an
game.
interesting thing.
That would be quite helpful, actually, in some ways.
Yeah.
Um, okay, McKenna, did you take this in a more normal way?
I think so. I went to the seaside village first, and
That's what it's called.
I was
Okay,
like, "What's
Seaside.
up, everybody?" Yeah, it's like seaside with a Y.
Yeah,
T or yeah,
Seafied.
SYDE.
they're being
I
cute
like
with
that.
their names in this game.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Uh, really cute village. I got excited about that village when it was in the trailer, and it's really cute. Um, Disappointed that there's no fishing there, but I still think it's cute. And there's a lot of cats.
There's
And
a
then
there's
Love
a
the
bit of
cat.
fish related activities at
there
least.
is a fish activity,
Yeah.
yes.
I was
Um,
gonna say I did some of the side quests in there, but I wasn't sure if they were ones that opened up before or after the dungeon.
Oh yeah, I don't
And
remember
that's
actually.
uh,
I
yeah,
think I
I
want to
think there's
say
maybe
I want to
a
say the
couple
shipwreck
before.
one is before the dungeon, or it's available to you before the dungeon, where the guy's like, "Oh, my boat is down there, and it's wrecked, and there's a scary jellyfish or something. I don't know."
I don't quite
I don't
remember.
think I talked to that guy until after I did the
I
dungeon.
think same,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
maybe it is after then.
Well, it's no big. That's one thing that's cool about these areas. It's nothing new. I feel like that's kind of a thing you'll see a lot, which is after the dungeon, you get to kind of like hang out with the people a little bit more in the area. It's not like you're just done with it. And this game does a good job after every dungeon of like having sometimes a handful of quests to go and do, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that quest? I mean, it's post dungeon, but I don't think it's you know.
I thought it was really cool. You basically have to like go to a wrecked ship, and there's like a shark echo that's guarding it. Which, side
Mhm.
note, once I defeated that shark echo, that I use that thing all the time in this area. That was such a good powerful water echo, especially compared to the other little like piranhas and chomper guys and
Hmm.
the anglers.
I got
But
that
you,
shark in the dungeon.
oh really?
Yeah.
Nice,
And I used it to kill that shark.
nice.
Yeah.
Um, and then it brings you into the ship, and it's like a little mini, almost like a little mini dungeon section, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of like the Eastern Temple type thing,
Hmm.
uh,
Mhm.
which was cool. Like that's one
Yeah,
thing
those are really cool.
I like. You don't know. Sometimes you're going into an area and you don't know the scale it's gonna be. Could be one room or it could be
Mhm.
many. It could feel like a mini dungeon, and that's something that was cool. Like the game kind of kept you on your toes a little bit. You didn't know what you would find.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that like when we were talking about this game before it came out, I was kind of hoping some of those like little pockets of still world were gonna kind of be like little one-off mini dungeon almost challenges,
Hmm.
and it seems like those have been less so that, but there are some of those just scattered throughout the world. Like there's the Eastern Palace and there's this and a couple random ones where it's like a cave system that leads you to a particularly strong enemy or something. You know,
Mhm.
I
Hmm.
that's a great way of incorporating that stuff into the overworld, I think. Especially when you just stumble upon it, you're just going into an entrance and you don't know what to expect. That's
And
Wead right there.
that is Wead. And at the end of this one, it's like, it's really cool because I don't think it's called this, but it's basically you you fight Baronade. I think it's not called
Does it
Yeah,
have a
Baronade,
name?
but it should be.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I think it's called like Bori or something like that. But
Eerie, Bari, Bori.
I could be wrong. But yeah, it was cool to see that. I don't think that's really a battle that we've seen.
It is Baronade.
Oh, it
It
is.
is. Okay.
His name's Baronade.
Someone.
You
Okay,
got a return of Baronade.
I got misinformation. Well, yeah, that was cool to see in like a 2D game, and the fight was fun. So, um, yeah, that's a post dungeon quest, I think. So sorry, we went a little out of order, but might as
My
well
bad.
talk about no. Oh, you're
Seaside Village, though.
It's much like how Corey played the game, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I just have to mess up the episode too.
Well, so yeah,
What about the fish one?
the fish one. Oh,
Yeah, the roasted fish.
oh yeah, you got to bring it. I like that the game makes you do those, and they won't let you. You have to escort some item to someone, usually food,
Yeah,
and they won't let you make an echo.
yeah. They
It's just
don't let you
it's not the
choose it. That
same.
that was the first thing. That was the first thing I did because it lets you learn the echo, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Now I'm gonna learn that. And then I immediately went up to him, and he was like, oh, ooh, is that fish? Nah, that's not the same as the one Mom makes.
It reminds me of Star Trek because they have the
Yeah,
replicator food, but they're always like, this is good, but it's not the same as like real food.
right. Yeah,
Makes sense.
I wonder what the echoes are like made of. What would it taste like if
Oh,
you tried to eat one?
that's a we're getting into
I
deep
mean,
questions
the,
here.
the monsters seem to like the bait.
Yeah, they're stupid though, you know.
Some of the cats like the fish.
That's true, but some are also picky,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the cats have different preferences.
Hmm. Well, Corey, you mentioned the chomp fin, and I feel like this was different, and I think this became kind of how it was throughout the game. Although McKenna, you did say you got the echo in the dungeon, but I started to feel like we had the strangula in the first dungeon, and I'm not trying to jump ahead and talk about the dungeon necessarily, but I felt like the following dungeons I wasn't getting. It was different than like a dungeon in another game where like I thought the echoes would act more like dungeon items, but I feel like it was more
Yeah.
each area had the area echoes and
Yeah.
you would start doing it's similar to like say how you get the Deku leaf in Wind Waker where they start you off before the dungeon even like you know doing stuff with it, but then the dungeon itself had the boomerang, whereas in this I feel like a lot of the puzzles you do in like dungeon stuff you also do like in like the areas beforehand. I think that's because it's more open, so like it's less like
Hmm.
there is some like tutorialization type stuff, but then it's like you can go ham and sort of do whatever you want all over the map. So, but anyway, that being said, I feel like the chomp fin and the bombfish were sort of like the
Yeah,
echoes
that's
of the
what
area.
that was the one that I was gonna mention is the bombfish because that I had a moment and I don't really remember specifically where I got the bombfish either, but I know I got the bombfish and once I did, I was like, "Oh, I can go back to all these spots where I've seen bombable portions underwater and clear that stuff out." And then I kept going along through the intended path and I saw a spot where I think they were where it felt like this is where you were supposed to get it for the first time, or if you had at least if you hadn't gotten it yet, this was a spot where it was like, oh no, now you can beat these guys and get this echo. So I do think that's pretty clever, and there is one when we get to the desert section too, where they do a pretty similar thing. And
Mm.
I think that is a pretty fun approach, and it makes sense to introduce it in that general area because it's just kind of something that's associated with the water mechanic, even though you can just use it to blow stuff up. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, McKenna, you got it in the dungeon. Uh, so was it like a game? The not the bombfish, but the chomp fin. But did you feel like that was I don't know. What'd you think about getting it then, as opposed to like what were you using before, like a bunch of the
Um,
piranhas or something?
yeah.
Hmm.
Which one was it? Not there. There's like two in there. There's the one with the light, and then there's the one. I guess there's like an angler and a piranha.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think one of them is. I think one of them was level 1 and one of them was level 2.
Oh,
And I
okay.
was using the level 2 one for a while, and I think it was working pretty well. And then once I got the chomp fin, so
Jump in, yeah.
chomp fin, yeah, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be my underwater dude now,
It
my
was
little
quite
buddy.
nice, yeah. I like that one a
Yeah,
lot. That
for
was
sure.
probably my most used in that region for sure. Uh,
Mm.
so you mentioned you wanted to see the Zoras, McKenna. Um, so did it live up to the hype? Were you happy to see them? What'd you think about them?
Um, I love the Zora. They're I think I've liked them like more and more with each game.
Mm.
And they all have fun little personalities. There's a river Zora that's scared of swimming. Um,
That's cute.
and they have this, they both have this musical element to them, but they got like two different genres. Like the Sea Zora are more tranquil, serene music, and the River Zora are more about like the happening, upbeat, get hyped music. And most of them are not clashing on this. It's the leaders really that are clashing. And uh yeah, I like that they gotta team up to make the good music. They gotta sort out their differences.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I like their little scenes where they're trying to go on their own and they're just playing some horrible sounding music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think this game, I think I said already, but I think it has like these sweet little stories kind of nestled into it that are they're not overly complex or anything, but I
Mhm.
think they're very charming, very sweet in a way that some of my favorite Zelda games do. And I really thought the Zora storyline here was quite cute. Um
Yeah, this section, it's pretty, from a gameplay perspective, it's kind of just like you got to go talk to this person to make them go somewhere. You got to go talk to this person to make them go somewhere. There's like a still
yeah.
world section. But I do like the I like that we get a focus on like a colony of River Zora, because for the longest time, especially in the early games, River Zora were just enemies. And then when they made the jump to having Zoras be NPCs, it was like the Sea Zora, and they were the big focus in like all the 3D games and stuff. And it pretty much wasn't until like A Link Between Worlds, pretty I think. There were probably a few scattered ones here and there, but A Link Between Worlds is when we finally got River Zora as like, no, these are just some cool peeps that hang out. And now we get like a full blown village. And I love that the I I will we always talk about the music, and I feel like we harp on how good some of the music in Zelda is, but like, my god, Jabul Waters and the two village themes for both of the Zoras are all
Oh yeah.
timers. Like, Jabul Waters is my wake up music now. It's my wake up
Oh.
alarm music. And I love that the Sea Zora village theme is very clearly like Zora's Domain inspired. It opens up and sounds very similar to like the Zora's Domains of the past, and that, but it has its own thing going on. It's
Mhm.
got like the harps or guitars or whatever. And then the River Zora village has the bombastic horns and an awesome melody and stuff, and very cool.
Yeah. Maybe it's is it this might be a different longer discussion, but I do feel like the soundtrack in the game is like does a really good job of like having similar vibes to like some of the comparable like areas or whatever in previous games, but like it feels like it's a lot of original melodies. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, yeah. Each no, but each time I get to, because you can clearly tell where they're inspired by, other Zelda themes of the past that are like that, but they all have pretty original melodies and they all sound unique and weirdly profound. Like for a game that's so silly,
Mm-hmm.
it does that thing that Link's Awakening 2019 does, where it's like, why are you hitting me with these super deep, awesome instrumentations with like layered instruments and
Yeah.
stuff? And not many of them have like super short loops. A lot of them go for a decent amount of time too, and they really hit you with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very cool. Um, I guess also in this region, what do we think about the return of we saw Baronade come back? What do we think about seeing Jabu Jabu again?
It was
Classic
exciting.
big old fish.
I like his design in this. It looks very
Yeah.
familiar.
Mm-hmm.
This is I think the first time. Well, usually like if there's something up with Jabu Jabu, but it's more like he's sick or not feeling well or something. And in this, it's a little scary because he's going crazy, and that made me realize like, man, if this big old fish is just jumping around and destroying stuff, I'd be pretty scared too.
And you gotta fight him.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. That's a pretty cool little fight.
Hmm.
Like a water based, but not like you're not like going totally in the water. You're like on top of it on platforms, but also like swimming in it a little bit.
Yeah, it was the yeah. It wasn't like I guess the fully underwater. We saved that for the
Hmm.
boss. Yeah, that was cool. I think this is the first time we have Jabu Jabu that we don't go inside Jabu Jabu. I think that's right, right? I think he's only in the two games, right? Not counting, there's Jaboon or
Baboon.
whoever, but we don't, that's a different guy. Um, but yeah.
Mhm.
So I mean, speaking of like fully underwater, I guess that was kind of the big, um, like one of the big gameplay gimmicks in this, and like we've mentioned that the game, there's times where it feels like closer to like a platformer,
Mhm.
and I kind of felt that way with this. I guess swimming's not like platforming, but just more that it's like it reminded me of like the game reminds me of Wind Waker in a lot of ways, where it's like there are like these nifty puzzles throughout the game, but there is just a lot of like figuring out like like ways to do like these various like physics based
Yeah.
platformy type challenges. And so in here you had that a lot with like I mean they bring water into other areas of the game still, but this was like really focused on that, and I thought it was pretty cool honestly. Like I like the water based challenges. What do you guys think? I feel like water is normally people like are like, oh, the water level's not no good. What do we think?
Water levels have secretly always been the best levels, so people need to get up with the times, all right? Yeah, but like the side scrolling like sections,
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about this before too, and it still I'm not to a point in the game where it feels like old hat yet. Each time I'm still like, wow, they really took this thing that was used here and there in Link's Awakening and we're just like, no, you're doing all of the game stuff, but also in this side scrolling
Mm-hmm.
perspective. Like they have the full blown puzzles, full blown fights, and they utilize it really well. And I'm actually kind of surprised. I feel like one of the classic tropes when it comes to water dungeons in Zelda is like raising and lowering the water level, which like there's some water based movement and redirection in the dungeon that we're about to get to, but it's I would have thought that that would be something that would kind of be like a given where it's like you have one of those side scrolling areas that has no water and then you have to fill it with water or something or vice versa.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That would be interesting. That would be an interesting like traversal thing. Like maybe you can't there's a gap that's well, Now that I'm thinking about it, you can't really do that because there's just so many ways to get around in this game that maybe it just wouldn't even be an obstacle, you know? You can make
Well,
your own dang water blocks at some point.
Hmm.
there is in a different dungeon something like that where it's like they want you to do water-based things, and there's ways to like get around it with echoes. So um, I guess I feel like they kind of do have stuff like that, but um, yeah, I don't know. But I guess before we go right into the dungeon, McKenna, any thoughts about swimming around? Do you have any?
Um, well, like speaking of the water block, I think probably my favorite water sections were like areas in the rift where you just be navigating the water vertically, and it was,
Yeah.
there'd be enemies in there. You could hop
Oh
in and
yeah.
out of the water, um, and use the water block. I Every time I got to one of those sections, I was excited because I just loved hopping in the water. It felt really good.
The water block. Yeah, where? When do you get the water block?
I think it's
I
not till later. But I can't remember where.
Hmm.
is it not in the
Is it in the dungeon
rift?
or is it in? I don't know.
Honestly, I've gotten so many echoes. I don't know where I learned any of them.
Well, I just because the water block is my MVP of the game.
It's really good.
It's
It's
the
a really
greatest.
good echo.
It's the greatest echo in the game for so many
Mhm.
reasons, but just the
Save it for our echo ranking.
yeah. Okay, well, I don't want to tell you about this because I feel like you might start messing with the numbers, but we're definitely gonna have to do a video when we're all done where we sort our echoes and we all give our top five most used and least used.
Yeah.
But I don't want it.
Yep.
No one juice your numbers here. We want authentic, real
No.
numbers. But I
No.
guarantee you that water block. Well, no, there's some
Water
later
block is
items.
one of mine too.
It might start to fade as I approach the end game, but we'll see. We'll see. Um, okay, water block. It's great. Let's talk about Jabul ruins because you mentioned there's sort of a water level gimmick in here, and I thought it was okay. It wasn't. I think we've just seen that with the water dungeons over the years. I feel like they're more and more like nervous about wanting to make them too tough. I think, and it's sort of
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't want this. I didn't especially being like for me it was the third, but potentially second dungeon. I didn't think it needed to be backbreakingly difficult or mind bending or anything, but what I will say I was slightly disappointed because um you see it's just like you go through and you activate more of this fountain that allows you to go higher. And I think once you do the first one, it's pretty obvious like, oh, okay, so I'm going to go to the right. I'm going to make it go a little higher, then I'm going to the second level
Yeah.
and I'm going to
Yeah.
make it go higher and then, where you're like it's just weird where like you could almost like know what the whole dungeon was going to be before you kind of even went to any of the rooms, you know what I mean? So that was a little disappointing, but the actual like challenges and like puzzles within were pretty fun. So I thought it was okay. Like I said, I didn't need to be crazy, but I was a little disappointed. But what did you guys think of the water gimmick?
I agree. I was disappointed. I remember seeing the in the trailer the little things you gotta light up to get the waterfall going, and I was kind of thinking, oh, maybe we'll get something like Great Bay Temple. Like I was hoping for some more complexity out of this. Um, but maybe in a game where it's super open and just easy to get around in whatever way you want to. Um, is not the game for those levels of complexity. Um, I'd love to see them do something in a non-echo based game where they get some complex water area in this style of game.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think we're 3 for 3 then on being slightly disappointed in this dungeon. Though I will
Mm-hmm.
say I wasn't. I do think it was a major step up from Southern Ruins because Southern Ruins just felt kind of like boilerplate intro dungeon to me, and this like I don't think it's kind of the same. I have the same sentiment as you, McKenna, where it's like I kind of was hoping for something more complex, especially when we knew that there was going to be some sort of water mechanic. And I get that, some people, when it comes to difficult water dungeons, they're like, oh, too confusing, bad dungeon. And those are the good dungeons. But that being said, while it was, they kind of almost took that layout structure almost from like not exactly a divine beast, but one of those dungeons where it's like central mechanic, you have to go off into each corridor to activate part of the central thing. I do think that central mechanic of having the big geyser is pretty fun, and I do think thematically the dungeon was very strong. Um, and what the main thing that stood out to me was the individual puzzles. I actually really liked this dungeon, or not this dungeon, this game in general. I feel like does a really good job of having one-off room puzzles just because of the
Mm-hmm.
mechanics with bond and reverse bind and or using echoes in whatever way you can. I think is just it's they have a recipe for success when it comes to setting up puzzles because they can be solved in any manner of satisfying ways. So I think that is a strong suit of this dungeon, but I agree. I was kind of hoping we were going to get something a little bit more difficult, a little bit more testing on the mind. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that being said, I think that this probably works better as the second dungeon than as the third dungeon, because I definitely would have been even more disappointed if I had done the Gerudo one first and then done this one. Because I was still in the mindset of like, all right, the game's opening up, like I can forgive it for being a relatively early dungeon. They don't want to bust your brain right
Yeah.
away,
Mhm.
especially because, depending on how someone's playing the game, they could have just gotten through Southern Ruins, followed the story immediately, not picked up very many echoes, and just they don't have a bunch at their disposal to solve puzzles and get around obstacles. Whereas when I got to this portion, I had a million echoes, several that I couldn't even use yet. So
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah.
I I'm willing to. I do think it's a little bit lackluster in comparison to what it could have been, but I'm willing to give it some props for just being a decent little early game water dungeon.
Yeah. It's like if it's like a second dungeon, like is it more? You compare it to something like Dodongo's Cavern or whatever. It's not like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
crazy or
exactly.
whatever, but
Like it's more complex than a Dodongo's cavern, I
yeah.
think. At
I
least in terms of the puzzles.
You kind of just when you have two dungeons, you can do in either order. I guess you just run that risk of maybe one's gonna
Yeah.
be. I did do it second, like or after the Gerudo area, so it was a little. It was slightly lackluster, and it really wasn't because it was simple. Um, it's like specifically because of how it was laid out. Where like I said, it was like, oh okay, like I know what the whole dungeon is already. So like even Dodongo's Cavern, I don't know why this is my go-to, but like that's a pretty straightforward. You go in a couple loops and you kind of follow a path, but there's sort of a sense of wonder as you like loop back into the room, and there's you're discovering new things. And this dungeon had that in the puzzles, but like I said, just in going through it, you're like, okay, it's like it's similar to how you're like, okay, I've got these two sides and I can do them in whatever order, which is cool. But I know I have to do those, and then I have to do those, and I have to do that, and there it is, bam, bam, bam. um, so it
Yeah.
just there was not much in terms of the room to room. There wasn't a lot of we add. It was more in the
Yeah,
puzzles, you
it's
know.
not a super Wead heavy dungeon. I think that it's maybe that's a misstep of this game, and it could also have to do with like the just the mechanics of echoes, using echoes to solve puzzles and stuff. Um, but I think what they could have done is taken a note from something like A Link Between Worlds, because I think that does this concept that we're talking about excellently, where you
Mm-hmm.
get Eastern Palace, and then you can do Tower of Hera or House of Gales in whatever order you want. They're both similarly they have similar difficulty levels, but it's not. They're just different styles of dungeon. Because Tower of Hera is just a complete vertical ascent. You don't have any question of where to go, but it's much more like you have to overcome the obstacles, avoid the enemies, solve the puzzles to continue going up. Whereas House of Gales has like much wider floors. You need to figure out where you're going, and it's like no matter which one you do, you're gonna find a new type of dungeon for the game, I guess. Whereas in this, I feel like comparing the two dungeons that are available in this section, in my opinion, one of them is clearly lesser than the other.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. But it was, yeah, I would also too. I think having I've mentioned this already, but maybe having even more crucial echoes you get in the dungeon would be cool. I think that could treat it almost like a dungeon item. Maybe there's things you can't get by without them. Maybe maybe you could cheese that. That'd be cool too. I think it's possible. I think we'll talk about it late in later videos, but I think they do a slightly better job in some other dungeons. Like, even though they're practically pretty open, there's some sort of all around puzzling you have to kind of do with the dungeon. It never gets
Yeah.
too wild, but I think it's possible. But yeah, again, being the second or third dungeon, I think that it's appropriately difficult. Still, um, but we'll see. I think one thing I've kind of questioned, and again, this is something to save for a later video, is like, what what do the later dungeons do? That's what I'm curious, is sort of the progression and the pacing and progression of the overall game. But
Yeah.
we'll put a pin in that. But so slightly disappointed, but overall it wasn't a horrible dungeon, and there was fun puzzles and a good vibe. So how about though, we got the boss, um Vocavore.
Vocavore.
I
I
think.
like that he shows up at the beginning of the dungeon.
True.
You get
Yeah, it's pretty
a
neat.
little encounter with him. You gotta, run away uh from his the tornadoes. I guess they're water
Oh
tornadoes.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. Water spouts.
There are
Uh
the game does a good job. They'll have some of those, like you've mentioned, the escape sequences. They have some of those.
yeah, I do like that, yeah.
That is kind of weird. You don't expect to face off with the boss
Yeah.
right away, and they go bam, there's the boss.
Mhm.
Kind of like, and I like that it's not like scripted. It's not like every dungeon that happens. So it gives it a little bit of extra oomph, that maybe the dungeon is lacking in some other areas. But
Mhm.
yeah, what do we think about this boss fight? I thought it was pretty fun.
Pretty fun. Kind of like an upgraded anglerfish or something.
Yeah.
Wow, that makes it sound not so good.
No, I did think of the anglerfish when the fight started, but it definitely
Yeah.
has some added complexity with the tornadoes that you gotta dodge, and then the second phase where um the water is kind of doing weird, or is that
Yeah,
the second phase?
that's
It's
this
like the walls of water.
that's the phase I like, where it's like the water. It's some sections of the water go away, so it's like you have to get from
Yeah.
water to water. I feel
Hmm.
like I kind of just brute forced this fight, and
Me
I feel
too.
like I did it relatively quickly, but it was still I still thought it was pretty cool.
It's definitely, if I'm ranking the bosses just offhand, I like the jab bongo bongo sort of guy
Yeah,
more.
the bongo bongo like.
Yeah. I kind of did. Yeah, I think I sort of brute forced it a little bit too. Just jump on the back and you know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it was all right though. But
yeah. It was fine.
yeah, Jabul Ruins. You know, it was fun. Like that's the thing about a lot of parts of this game where no, I feel like what I'm getting with it is that it it really is about doing these more creative sort of platformer type challenges and things like that. Like I'm finding, and maybe it's because I'm doing a lot of Dream Dojo. I'm doing like all the missions there, but I just feel like a lot of it is coming up with less about like there is puzzles for sure, but like a big portion of it, especially just running around the world and stuff, is just like coming up with the most efficient way to like move about the area you're in while there's like enemies and obstacles. And so certainly that can be kind of puzzling because you got to know like what echoes do I want to throw out and stuff like that. But like it feels more like actiony than anything to me. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my main takeaway for this dungeon, this region. But the Zoras are also really nice, and it was cool to see their story resolved. And um, yeah, what do we think about this area overall?
I think
It,
So,
you go first, McKenna.
it's a nice area. Didn't love the dungeon, but I liked the stuff leading up to it. I like the stuff story wise. I like the platformy stuff. I realized if I mostly think of this game as a platformer, I like it more. Like this is a different genre than the Zelda games we're used to.
mm-hmm.
And I think if I think of it as its own thing instead of comparing it as much to other games, I like it more.
Yeah, I think yeah, I'm with you there. I feel like yeah, well we can talk more about that towards later. I don't want to spoil too much of that. Corey, what were we gonna say?
I think the main strengths of this whole section is just kind of like the thematic elements and the world elements for me.
Mm-hmm.
I liked seeing the Zora, hanging out with the Zora, seeing the two different tribes, the seaside village. I like the shipwreck part. I like Jabu Jabu. I like the music. I like the theme of the dungeon. I just like the water. And I guess I like the like you two are saying, the platforming elements that come along with that and some of the puzzling elements. I didn't think the dungeon was too excellent, and while I like the how whimsical it is that it's like the two chiefs fighting each other, I kind of felt like fetch quest errand boy, like, oh, you got to go talk to this person to make them go here and then talk to this person to make them go here,
Yeah.
as opposed to, even though there was a couple or maybe just one still world section leading up to it, I think the next one that we're going to talk about is a step up in that department of because this game does do that classic Zelda trope of get to an area, help this people solve their problem, go to a dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
And the next area that we're going to talk about does that too, and I think it does it in a more efficient and more fun way, in my opinion.
I think I agree. So yeah, I think we'll stop here for now, and I think we can get into in our next video. We'll get into the Gerudo Desert area, and we'll go over our feelings about that. But I think we're all kind of on the same page. But yeah, let's leave for the next one. So thanks everyone for coming in to the Echo Chamber. Let us know what other Echoes topics you'd like to see us discuss, and we'll see you in the next video. Later.
Bye.